I am Petya Rasheva and you are with The Path to Power. Today I am talking to Heiko Arnold, until very recently the Chief Operating Officer of Aurubis, the largest metal producer in Europe. Welcome, Heiko.
Thanks, Petya, and thank you for having me on your podcast.
Thank you for joining us. Heiko, would you give us a very brief overview of your career path?
Sure, Petya. I started, as you said already, in 2020 being the Chief Operations Officer for Aurubis. And Aurubis is the biggest copper producer in Europe. This job was a very exciting job for me because it entailed two elements which have been part of my career for a long time. One is the operational excellence. Operational excellence is for all process industry, especially the commodities, critical, because the competition has been developing in Asia. So a position needs to be strengthened by looking at your cost. But on the other side, and that's the more creative part, it's organic growth. Aurubis had to invest in replacing older assets, but also had to invest into new fields, expanding the capabilities on secondary copper, on scrap, where we started a project in the US, but also developing new business fields, like, for example, the recycling of batteries. So a very exciting time of my career here in Hamburg, in the headquarters. And prior to that position, I was Chief Technology Officer of Lenzing. Lenzing is an Austrian stock-listed company producing man-made cellulosic fibers. We all know those fibers as viscose or lyocell, or the brand name was Tencel. Here again, being a commodity producer, operational excellence played a significant role. And they had two large investment projects running. One that was already approved prior of me joining the company, that was in the US, in Mobile, Alabama, down in the south, a brownfield project. And then the project in Asia that we had in a very early stage was getting increased pressure of being delivered faster. Yeah, that were my two C-level experiences, and prior to that I was 22 years working for German chemical major BASF.
In BASF, you actually started as a junior chemist and became the vice president of the Asian division. What happened there, and how did that prepare you for your C-level roles?
Yeah, Petya, you mentioned it. When you start at BASF, it doesn't really depend on what you want. BASF tells you what you should do for the company, and that was starting in research and development. And that wasn't what I initially wanted. I wanted to start in production because I was kind of, after 10 years at university, I wanted to apply chemistry and not
You have
create.
a PhD. You have a PhD in chemistry. Right?
Yeah.
That's why 10 years in university.
That's why 10 years. That's why 10 years, exactly. But I was lucky enough, my first boss understood where my passion was, and he gave me R&D topics that were close to implementation. And that was the final development of a catalyst to be produced and to be applied and used in one of BASF's technology fields where they were the leading producer. The chemical was acrylic acid. And while I was always aiming at going to South America, I love the culture, I've been there. They approached me and asked me whether I would like to go to China. And I said, well, I can barely eat with chopsticks and I have no affiliation with that culture. Why should I go? And to tell you an honest story, I was the only one who didn't say no. So at the end, that's why I was selected. And why did I choose to go there? Well, as a researcher, you don't get often the chance to build on large scale what you have done in your research. And that was this unique chance, being part of a 3.5 billion mega project. It was a joint venture between Sinopec and BASF in Nanjing. The first big investment in China. BASF had done an earlier, smaller investment in Asia, in Malaysia. And I was there the first time in 2001. Rapeseed field was March, all yellow. And I thought it's going to be a long way, a long journey before that becomes a large petrochemical site. Fast forward a little bit over 4 years later, you stand on top of a 50-meter high column, you look around and you see that this landscape has changed. It's now a petrochemical investment. It has changed me in the way how I work, how I think, and it has changed the life of people because it was a very modern, environmentally friendly and safe joint venture to operate. I learned a lot in the course of that project. First and foremost, I would say that stakeholder alignment is key, and that is also important on C-level. We were 4 main stakeholders: BASF, technology provider and joint venture partner; Sinopec, joint venture partner; and then 2 engineering companies. One was building our plant and the other was kind of the project management consultant. And you need to align. That takes time, that requires communication. You need to form one team, one goal. And I found that this was time well spent, because in a project, and you know that, Petya, you have been on projects yourself, there's not always a trouble-free ride. You will hit roadblocks and you need to solve them. You need to solve them quick.
That's rather the rule. You will hit roadblocks.
Exactly. The timing you need to overcome the roadblock is an essential part whether you are successful or not. And I must say we made it. We crossed the finish line first, and we had that plant operational in March 2005, and I could operate that plant for about a year. And it was great to see how it worked, how our employees were obviously well trained, because it's not the project manager who runs the plant. It's those 60, 70 workers who operate the plant in a 24/7 operation. And that was a great experience. And that was contrary to what many people said in BASF, that we could never run such a complex technology in China. A good learning.
It boosted your career as well, didn't it?
It did, because as we were successful, I got a chance to move to BASF's regional headquarters in Hong Kong. And I was promoted to my first senior executive position, Vice President Technology. But I can tell you it was a sharp change. In Nanjing, my target agreement fitted on a beer coaster. It's build it on time, build it on budget, have no accidents. That's plain and simple. We operated very independent from that large company's organization. Not much reporting, just deliver. Then you come to Hong Kong, and I still have it in my mind what regional business unit had asked me in the beginning. And he was a little bit arrogant because he was earning, I think, 80% of the results of BASF at that time. And he asked me, Heiko, does your unit actually add value, or are you just a burden to my bottom line? And I must say, a warm welcome sounds different. I wasn't shy in giving him an answer. And I said, Mr. Chu, please allow me half a year and then we should have that conversation. I did deliver also in his mind, because I helped to solve one problem he had. And that was the start of a good collaboration. And what did I have to learn? Where's the difference? I mean, a regional headquarters is complex, is political, is a matrix organization. And it's thereby very, very different from what I had in Nanjing. BASF offers a couple of tools that trigger feedback and self-reflection. And I think the most essential one was the 360 feedback I did after a year. And I did not like what I read in the beginning. But then I had a conversation with the head of learning and development, and he explained to me, I said, take that feedback as a learning opportunity. It doesn't matter whether you think they are right or not. It's their perception that matters to the way how you are seen in the organization. And I think that was what was essential, because on a project you don't have time for self-reflection. You're living in the moment, you're living to your schedule, you fix problems. When you come and become a line manager, other leadership qualities matter. So I think it was very valuable for me, having experienced both the project management and the line management, because they are essentially different. Some project managers are so brutal and focused in achieving their goal, and they often deliver their projects, that they are very poor line managers. And I learned that line management part in my 11 years at BASF in the regional headquarters. It was a fun time, a lot of growth, a lot of freedom, but after 15 years in Asia, it was about time to go home. And that's when this disruptive change came, when I was asked whether I could imagine to move over to Lenzing to become the CTO. And I said again, the change to China was positive. Why should I not change and go to Lenzing? And if I look back, I think it was the right decision, because otherwise the next position in BASF was planned. You know the company, and the only thing you miss is the acquaintances you have made, the friendships at work. Those you cannot bring to your next company. But other than that, I would say embracing change as an opportunity has served me well.
And how different was it to move to a smaller company coming from a Fortune 500 company?
Significantly different. It was very, very positive to see that the way how functions work in smaller companies, they predominantly serve the business, which was also my philosophy. Yeah? That was this initial challenge that the RBU had gave to me, but not all functions work the same. Corporate governance can be over-dominating. When you want to, for example, reward an employee with an extraordinary payment, in a company like BASF, that can be an uphill battle. If you work in a smaller company, and of course if you are on board level, that's a lot easier. So that is extremely rewarding, that you have more degree of freedom. On the other side, I would say it's a challenge to smaller companies because they also need some of the structure. Yeah, that's this transition when you want to grow further. And as a career advice, I would say moving from a large company to a smaller one will come along with this feeling of more freedom, more creativity, and that's satisfactory to me. If I would have developed in Lenzing and then moved, or in Aurubis, and then moved to BASF, I think I would have found myself in a cell. I cannot move left or right because you hit boundaries everywhere. When you grow up with those boundaries, they don't matter so much, and you enjoy the new freedom.
You're just but the other way around, landscape.
Exactly, but the other way around might be tough. And I have experienced some people who moved from smaller companies to BASF, especially in post-merger integration processes. I would say here BASF could have been more successful in keeping the talent, but they left because they found they were not satisfied at work anymore because they were too constrained.
And Heiko, how do you end up on a C position? How did it happen for you? You don't apply on a job announcement in the newspaper, right?
No, there are no C-level job announcements in the newspaper. Well, it started, like I think for many, with a headhunter approaching me, and that headhunter sent me an email to my work email asking for a reference for a colleague who was under the assessment of becoming a C-level. And I replied, yeah, we can do that this evening, 7 o'clock, it's okay. Yeah, works. I postponed it to 8 because I was running late in the office. And when I picked up the phone, back then it was phone, no Teams, he said, well, actually, Mr. Arnold, it's not about a colleague, it's about you. I said, surprise. What is the company's nature and why do they want me? And he was explaining, as I said earlier, organic growth, technical disciplines, balance in the board. They wanted a technical person. I must say the supervisory board chairman was a German. The company was Austrian. That comes with some cultural conflicts. And I didn't give myself much chance of being successful here. But again, I thought, why not? All you invest is your weekend, flying to Vienna, doing the first interview, and then you see whether it works out or not. Turned out to be 3 more flights to Vienna, and then I got the offer. And it's not easy to leave a company after 22 years, because I didn't leave because I didn't like it anymore. It's the chance of something new, something that came along also with significantly higher pay, of course, But that's not the main driver. It was this excitement of doing something out of your comfort zone again. Because in the 11 years in Hong Kong, being one of the longest serving delegates, you are not challenged anymore. You know your business, you know how to work efficiently, but there's no challenge. And there wouldn't have been a big challenge going back to headquarters. The cultural reintegration into Europe, that would have been the biggest challenge. But I found the challenge of working for another company at that position more interesting.
And looking back, how would you summarize what has been critical in your path to power?
Well, I think, and that started with the project in China, invest time in forming your team. Mm-hmm. That I must stress. If you want to go long and successfully, you work in a team. If you want to have a short sprint, you better do it alone. But on C-level or leading a corporate function, you need a strong team. You need peers who accept you. So you need to spend time on communicating. You need to spend time listening. You need to understand what is the problem of the business units. How can you help them? And last but not least, I would say, if you want to improve your credibility, it's not only about what you talk, but what you do. And here in particular, I had a chance of developing Asian candidates because BASF found it important that we would grow Asian talents. So I invested a lot of time in selecting people for site manager positions, corporate functions, and that's extremely rewarding. Also then on C-level, if you, for example, when I came to Lenzing, but also when I came to Aurubis, I found it odd that all board members were external hires. I was not familiar with that. In BASF, 2/3 of the board members typically are homegrown talents. And in Lenzing, I did not succeed in having any board successor developed, but in Aurubis, my former staff became a board member, and I think that gives you credibility in an organization when you invest time in developing people, when you are there for your staff as well.
In our conversation last week, you mentioned something very interesting, that you should be aware of what you are good in.
Exactly. For me, it was always clear that after the experience in Nanjing, that I would want to stay in the technical area. That's where my passion is. And that's
you always
where
wanted to become a chemist, right?
Correct. I knew in primary school I wanted to become a chemist or a physician. That was more or less equal, but you can only choose one profession. And I'm happy with that. And when I was 40, between Nanjing and Hong Kong, I was asked, in which direction do you want to develop? General management, with the outlook of becoming an RBU head, or technical? And my initial reply was very fast, because it came from my heart, and that I wanted to stay in the technical area. I've experienced what it takes to make a project successful, and I think the company and myself, we would benefit from having that on the next level in the organization. And the reply was, well, then maybe it takes a little bit longer to be promoted. And I said, well, I don't really care about that. It would have mattered if they would tell me, then your development is finished. But that was not the message. The message was just, there are fewer jobs. But I think, as an advice to everybody, do where your heart is and not do what other people tell you you should do. If that doesn't feel right for you, don't do it, because you won't be good at it. You spend so much time at work, you need to have this intrinsic motivation, the passion for it, and then you will be good.
And then it is to dare into the unknown, right?
Exactly. If you only stay within your comfort zone, I think nobody will make it. You will not have this development, because nobody is going to be hired at a function where you have everything it takes to become a C-level. You develop gradually. I personally look at it skeptical when you have development programs like BASF in the early times, where they would determine with an entry candidate whether he could make board or not. I firmly believe you need to observe the people in the role, and you maybe can plan 2 roles ahead, but not 5 steps in the hierarchy of a large organization. For me, it was always the next step that mattered, where was an opportunity where I thought I would fit, and that has served me well in my career development.
And Heiko, once you reach a level of seniority, what changes?
Well, you come with a lot of credit. People look up to you, people accept you, people acknowledge hierarchy. It's different from culture to culture, but if you come as a board member, you typically are heard. You don't have to make yourself heard. What I think is crucial is that you still keep listening skills, because you will deal as a board member with so many topics where you're not the specialist anymore. So other people do know better, and they appreciate if they have a voice and if their voice is heard. So I think that's key to be successful. That's key to be successful in driving the right decision. So when you have an issue at hand, don't close the office door and dwell on it for 5 hours. Discuss it with your employees. Yeah, they know better. They have the longer experience in the company. And that also applies, but you need to respect the confidentiality of things. That also applies for choices of personnel, important promotions. That was, by the way, also a role well established in BASF. It was not just a paper process. But these are the important steps. So it's the listening, it's the time for communication. When you have to make a tough call, don't make the mistake to just make that call based on the hierarchical position you have, but if possible, outline, explain, frame it, give the right background, so that the people understand. And you have to acknowledge not all decisions you have to take will be embraced by everybody as positive. But again, you need to communicate and keep the team together. I think that's essential, because you will not be successful in the long run if you don't communicate to your supervisory board, to the organization, but also laterally to your peers. That's key.
I also recall you mentioned how important it is not to pass down the pressure.
Correct. I think all of us, we have experienced bosses that when it gets difficult, they get nervous. They increase the pressure. They put up timelines where they know they are impossible, but they probably didn't dare to confront their superior with the impossibility of that timeline. And I think the moment you start to show that behavior, the first time they might tolerate it, but if you do it in the long run, you lose credibility. You need to be a leader that is fostering development, demanding performance, but only setting targets that have a chance of being achieved. If you set the target barrier too high, people will not be motivated. Just imagine if you are overweight and you set yourself a target to run a marathon in under 3 hours. You will fail, because most likely you will not even finish, because your knees give up before that. But if you set yourself a target of, I do my first 10 kilometers in a decent time and I slowly grow, well, then you can develop. And I think it's the same in business. You need to gauge what is achievable. You need to see also that the organization has what it takes to be successful. Yeah? Very often you engage with a consultant, you develop a great strategic investment plan, but you don't have the people. So you need also that balance on the board where you have voices that say, well, we agree all on the strategy, but we need to check whether we have all elements that are required for that strategy to be implemented. It's this diversity, I think, that matters a lot.
And Heiko, you have held all these very senior positions that come with a lot of stress. how do you rest and recover?
It's important because I think you cannot maintain a high performance level. You will be impacted by stress, and if you can't compensate that, then you will show these edges, then you will become irritated, and that's not good for your performance at work. For me personally, what works best are two elements. I love eating and cooking. Cooking is applied chemistry. For me and my wife, we often cook together. She cooks the Asian part, I cook all the rest, and we do enjoy eating together, also having friends over for dinner. And on the other side, what I love to do is sports, mountain biking, trail running, and most recently here in Hamburg, because it's not the mountain biking paradise, I started to do kayaking. The sport activities really helped me to find my inner balance, because it allows you to forget about work, focus on the moment, get physically exhausted. But I do believe when you exhaust yourself physically and you then recover, you are also prepared for the stress at work in a much better way.
Yes, I agree with that. I'm a climber myself, and climbing has been a very important part of my life for the last 20 years.
Yeah, it gives you also a different sense of achievement, right? Because while you might not always be successful during the working week, but if you finish your round of mountain biking in a new record time, or you manage the technical difficulty that you haven't dared to drive down, but then for the first time you succeed without any injuries, then that gives you a good feeling, and we need to have those moments.
And you miss it. You miss it.
I miss
stay
it.
Away.
Yeah. That's why Hamburg will not be my permanent base in Germany. That's a given. It's just too flat, too windy. Nice people though.
Too humid as well.
Yeah.
So Heiko, what comes next for you?
Tough question. I asked that question to myself, and I again was listening. Where's my passion? And I was lucky because I was approached by a Swedish startup that needed an external expert in challenging them on their status of a new technology. So I'm advising them. That's like a 50% FTE assignment. They are operating a pilot plant, and they still have a way to go before they are ready for a large investment decision. That keeps me busy at the moment. But I also have a private project. I always loved traveling. 2 years ago, I signed up a contract for an expedition vehicle. I've done my truck driving license in January, and I bought a new 4x4 truck. You use them on a construction site. Successfully transferred that to the supplier of the cabin, and I'm waiting for that project to be completed. That's going to be next year, and that will then allow me to travel and to stay wherever I want to stay, because I have the independence. I have enough water, I have enough fuel, I have solar power. So traveling and getting to know the world more than I have done before, because when you are in a senior executive position, your vacation time is limited to about 2 weeks, because otherwise there's just too much piling up, and the recreation will be gone immediately when you see the pile of unanswered emails. So that is what I'm looking forward to as well.
Sounds fantastic. We will be following your journey.
Please do so, Petja.
Thank you very much, Heiko, for this conversation on my behalf and on behalf of the Path to Power audience.
You're welcome, Petja, and I hope it was insightful for the audience.
It was indeed.
Wish you all the best.
Thank you.